And now, from England, it's the WideShut webcast.
Hello everyone, you are tuned in to the return of the WideShut webcast with me, Keelan Balderson. But I'm no longer alone in the cold, dark WideShut shed because I'm joined by our new co-host, Liam Dunn. How's it going, Liam?
I'm good, thank you, Keelan. Thank you for having me here on the show.
No worries. Some of you may remember Liam from one of my videos back in... Was it 2010 or 2009? I can't quite remember.
I think it might have been... Is this the one we nearly got arrested with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking, was it 2009 or 2010?
I think it was New Year's Eve on either one of those years. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but,
it was around that time period. But yeah, that was surreal.
Yeah, if people want to go back into my YouTube account, we were threatened for breach of the peace for basically just filming in a public place and handing out leaflets about Philip Green, who's this big corporate. He owns the Arcadia Group, which is like Dorothy Perkins and Topshop, and we all know how you love Topshop, Liam.
Of course.
And he wasn't paying his tax, and you know he's got the Arcadia Group set up through all these offshore companies with his rich wife in Monaco who doesn't actually do anything for the company and all that kind of jazz. And we were basically just handing out leaflets and trying to engage the public a bit. And we got threatened for breach of the peace because this one guy seemed to have a massive heart attack at the sight of a camera, even though there was like 5 CCTV cameras right above him along the high street. But
it all stemmed because you were giving out flyers about the information, and you gave it to this old man. We didn't catch his name for obvious reasons. He wasn't very happy with us. But you gave it to this old man, and and I was filming it, and he was not very happy. He said that he had to give us permission to film him. Which after we did that, I did some research, and it turns out we didn't really, because we weren't interviewing him. He was just walking past the camera, and we were filming in a public place, and by law we can do that without having to get everybody's permission. It's a public...
I mean, if he was nice and friendly, we would have happily not included him in any like videos or anything. If he didn't want to be on it, we'd have just got rid of it. But I think it just demonstrated that people don't understand the law and don't even understand kind of the way a whole high street is filled with cameras. But when 2 average people are just out on the street doing a little bit of creative work, passing out leaflets and stuff, it's a big shock to them. And I don't think people understand that they're being recorded all the time.
Exactly. You can, even walking down the high street, going into the shops, cameras are on you pretty much 24/7. So I don't know. I think everything was blown out of proportion. He was shouting. He wasn't very happy. And of course, the local bill, as we call it, the police.
These two morons just.
And they came over and they were telling us to stop filming. And I think you pointed the camera down to the ground so that you could record what they were saying, but you weren't pointing it in their face. I think that, if I remember correctly, I don't know.
Yeah, and then all I can remember is that one lady, the lady police officer, she just kept saying, at the end of the day, a breach of the peace has occurred. It's like, no, it hasn't. What are you on about?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was blown completely out of proportion, and of course, who are you gonna blame? The old man who demands that the world owes him everything, or the 2 youngsters just trying to get by?
And I mean, it was quiet old Stamford on like a Saturday or Sunday evening or something. Like, they're probably not used to people challenging the status quo down the high street. So
that's true. You don't get very many old people in those mobile buggies just sort of making a ruckus as they go by. But what can I say?
And of course, you were the person that first turned me on to 9/11 Truth while we were at college. So this is really all your fault.
Yes,
me doing this crazy show and having this radical website. This is all your fault, Leon.
it is. But you know what? You've had your 7/7 documentary shown on Sky, so I because of that, I claim that as a tiny little victory for me as well. Because if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have made that documentary, and yeah, it all snowballed. But yeah, that was completely my fault.
Just don't expect to get paid because
no, that's fine. I've realised that.
The only money I've ever really made on this, I had to give back because I didn't end up finishing making my last documentary. So I had something like £400 worth of donations, and I had to give it all back. And because Indiegogo takes a cut, I was out of pocket. So I'm minus money doing this.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks. But they always do. I've not. I don't know if many of your listeners know, but I come from a film background myself, actually, and yeah, we've worked with Indiegogo before, and they always do take a cut. They take 4% if you make your target, or 9% if you don't.
Yeah, that sucks. I didn't really think about that at the time, but
yeah, you've got to be quite careful because it's sort of in the small print they do that.
Have you used the other one? I think I chose Indiegogo because Kickstarter was just like American. I'm not sure.
No, I've never used Kickstarter, I'm afraid, so I don't know how that one is.
Anyway, just to update everybody as to the current status of the show, basically going forward, we're going to be doing this as a pre-recorded podcast rather than live. I mean, I don't see any major benefit in doing it live. People watch things when they want to watch them these days, so it'll just be up on the YouTube channel and on the website as and when we do one, hopefully every week or couple of weeks or so, and hopefully having two of us now actually having a discussion, and heaven forbid maybe disagreeing with each other, should actually make for a more entertaining format. I don't know. And also, it's all about you guys, because instead of going through the news or going through what I've already posted on the website and just repeating it all again, we're going to change it into a mailbag format. So basically, your questions and your opinions are basically what we're going to cover on the show. So if you do want to leave a question for future episodes, you can do it on the Facebook, you can do it on the YouTube videos themselves, you can send me an email, you can do it through the comment section on the website. I mean, you can send us a carrier pigeon, you can leak something through WikiLeaks, or
century.
Give us a Freemasonic hand signal as we're walking down the street. Just some way that you can send us information, we'll take it and we'll answer it on the show. But just before we actually get to the questions, there's only two this week, so we might have a bit more time to just blab on. But how's GTA 5?
GTA 5's fun. I've recently bought it, actually. Not that anybody is really truly interested, but Stamford, which is where I live, like we were saying, is full of old people. They sold out of copies instantly. Like, I tried to get a copy and there was none. So I ordered it off Amazon, and apparently it was supposed to take 3 weeks to get here, but it came a couple of days ago. I've been playing it on and off for a little bit. I've been trying to be responsible and get some work done, because I freelance in the film industry as an editor, so I've been trying to get some work done. But it's a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoy it, and the game is massive, so it's a lot of fun. But you know, there's things that you can do in there. For example, in the game, you can actually smoke weed and get high. But the thing is, when you do that, the character says, you know, he says, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, and what am I doing with my life, and things like that.
Oh, so it's kind of negative propaganda at the same time.
Well, it allows you to do it, but when you do it, the character is sort of self-aware that he shouldn't be doing it, despite the fact that it's okay to go and steal cars.
Right.
Well, they never say anything about that. But smoking the weed is he says, I should think about my life, not killing Hispanic people, which is one of the first missions in the game.
Killing Hispanic people?
Killing Hispanic people, yeah. I don't know if anyone's planning to get it, so I won't ruin too much of the story. To be fair, I haven't got that far into it anyway. but there is a mission where you have to kill some Hispanic people.
I've not really been paying attention to the kind of media coverage of GTA 5. Has there been any of the usual controversy of oh my god, you can steal cars in a game, burn everybody, like
Of course there was I've actually forgotten the guy's name. He's American, and the game's only been out about a week and a half of this recording, and they're already blaming this guy who went on he stole cars and I think he killed people as well. They're already blaming him for the game, because apparently he played the game for a little bit or something like that, and it's automatically the game's fault.
Oh, so no one's ever stolen a car before?
Apparently not until this past couple of weeks.
It's my understanding that Grand Theft Auto is based off of an actual crime that can be committed in America, so I'm guessing the crime came before the game.
Grand Theft Auto is the legal name of stealing a car. That's why it's called Grand Theft.
Right.
So that is the legal terminology. If you get arrested for Grand Theft Auto, it means that you've been arrested for stealing a car, which you would know because you've been arrested for stealing a car. Not you, just people in general. I
wasn't aware of this.
No, I'm not arresting you live on the show.
Well, it seems to me like the media and the politicians that get so worked up over this game, it's like they just have to make something up to get outraged about. There's nothing else in the news. Oh, we'll just talk about this game.
Well, there's something that happened a couple of weeks ago, and I was reading it online. I think it was on AOL.com or something like that, and it was about this Brazilian boy, and he killed, I believe it was his parents and his brother, and then he went off to school. And of course, people started blaming video games, and the one video game that they blamed was Assassin's Creed. Now, I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I really enjoy the game. I enjoy the story, and something just didn't make sense to me when I was reading the story, because I think it said that the boy shot them. He shot them with a gun, and then it noted in the story that he was obsessed with violent video games.
Are there even guns in that game?
Well, this is what I was going to say. He's obsessed, apparently, with the video games Assassin's Creed. And as I said, I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed. I've played all the games, and I can tell you that there are guns in the game. Well, not in the first one, and then you get a sort of variation of the gun, like
a musket,
quarters of the way into the second game. But the primary weapon of the characters in Assassin's Creed is a little hidden knife. Now, that might not be helping with knife crime, but we'll get to that at some other point, maybe later on in this episode, maybe not. But it's not really often that your characters use guns, because the game makes it purposely difficult to use a gun. It's not like we said in Grand Theft Auto, which is very easy to find a gun and pick up and use.
It's more stealthy.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed, it's more stealthy. Guns give it away, and you can only carry like 5 bullets, and that's about it. So it doesn't make sense that they are blaming Assassin's Creed for it when the characters mainly use knives and swords. They do use guns, but it's not very often. So it just seems to me like the media in general, and I've always thought this since about college, when I met you actually, Keelan, I've always thought that the media needs a scapegoat, and I find it quite disheartening as somebody who works in the creative industry, in film, and other people who work even in music. They've blamed music for crimes before, and films. I mean, some guy went on a killing spree and said he did it because of Star Wars. I've never watched Star Wars and thought I need to kill my entire neighborhood. But it just seems to me like they need a scapegoat, and it's sad when creative people are laid with the blame. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that these blames are unfounded. Because
I think crazy, mental, broken people have always snapped and committed murder and crimes. I mean, back when there was only westerns on television and none of these games or anything, people were still going out murdering people. If it really had such a negative impact, why aren't you or I or millions of other people suddenly going around shooting or committing crimes. Obviously, anyone that's influenced by games like GTA are already mentally disturbed, and that's a whole different fact, like a whole different thing to get into. It's got nothing to do with the games. It's their upbringing. It's maybe they're born with a mental imbalance. You know, you can't put the blame on outside things.
It's funny you say that because I'll share something a little personal here. I've actually played Grand Theft Auto since when it came out, which was about 97. I've played the original Grand Theft.
Oh, that first one was awesome.
The first one, right? Yeah, the original Grand Theft Auto.
When you used to run over the line, was it a line of soldiers or something, and it'd just like, up,
and scream at you like 10 points for hitting something. It was a point system for running people over, right? Now, you could say, these people who want to play video games could say, well, Liam, at 7 years old, you watched it, you realised it was very cartoonish, it didn't have any effect on you. But I don't think that's true. I mean, using the Star Wars example that I gave a couple of minutes ago, I think that I think there has to be something mentally wrong with people in order to do that. I don't think that the game is responsible for turning a normal person into a bloodthirsty killer. I think there's always that instinct there in those specific people. Maybe the game set it off. Maybe they do.
But yeah, exactly. But if it wasn't the game, it would be a film. It would be something else. Yeah.
It's always going to be there. And by banning these games, you're not going to stop this apparent new generation of serial killers we're going to have. I mean, again, like I've said, Grand Theft Auto has been out since 1997. It's nearly 20 years old, 16 years old to be exact. And I've not seen a rampant drug increase, or I've never seen a car being stolen. In fact, I've played Grand Theft Auto since I was 7, like I said. I have yet to even have a driving lesson. I've never been behind a wheel. So, I don't know where these reports are coming from, saying that apparently this is going to influence me to steal cars, because I've not even been bothered to have a driving lesson.
Well, the only effect that I've ever really experienced playing video games is, oh, I'm really pissed off, I just lost, I'm going to throw the controller on the floor. A 5-second spurt of anger, but that's about it. I'm not going to go run around my whole street killing people.
That's about it. And, you know, I'm going to talk from a sort of a psychological point of view, because I've got family members who have degrees in psychology, and I was discussing it with them, and we were talking about Grand Theft Auto, because when I was talking to them about it, Grand Theft Auto 4 just come out, and I remember this conversation really well, and we were talking about it, and he said, he thinks that games like Grand Theft Auto are good for people, not negative like what the media would portray. That he says that actually for healthy humans, it's very good for them. And I asked why, and I said, well, what it is that it allows you to unleash a certain aspect of your personality. That
it's an outlet.
Yeah, you have to keep certain aspects of yourself bottled up. We all have that potential to be that crazed maniac.
Well, we're still the same makeup as we were thousands of years ago, running through the jungle, attacking wild animals and stuff.
Exactly.
That's still inside us somewhere.
We all have that potential to go over to the dark side as Darth Vader. So he says that Grand Theft Auto and games like Grand Theft Auto allow a healthy adult to participate in events that they can't do in real life. They can go out and just run rampant and cause chaos, because there's parts of us that might want to do that. You know, a healthy human can hide that part of themselves a lot better than an unhealthy human who might, get influenced by these potential games or films and go out and do it. And he said that the other thing is that when you shut off the game, any repercussions of what you've just done are automatically gone. So you do not get thrown in jail or anything like that. And in fact, even in the game, if you get arrested, the game just teleports you to a checkpoint and you start again, and you can keep that rampage going. There's no consequences. And he says that it's healthy because it allows you to express that side of your personality. And I think it's true. And I think to blame these games for every little problem is wrong, because it
Just
is
a cop out.
it is. It's a creative outlet, for one. And two, I think it can be healthy for people. I mean, let's just say you work at a dead end job that you absolutely hate. You have to be nice to your boss. You've got brown on your nose there, and you can't get away from it. You plug in GTA and you can be basically whoever you want to be, and you can cause chaos, and you can just say fuck the world. And then when you turn the console off, there's no repercussions because you're back in the real world.
Well, it's the same theory behind, other cultures. You look at Japan and they have the most bizarre kind of sexual weirdness. And they say that's just an outlet for, the same sort of thing that you're saying. It's just an outlet.
I agree with you. If they banned Grand Theft Auto, they'll blame something else. If they banned video games, they'll blame films. If they blamed films, they'll ban them, and then they'll blame bloody music. And I just think that they need to stop finding a scapegoat and need to start trying to figure out a way to screen people from an earlier age. And also, the other thing I need to say as well is what's not helping is when parents buy their 8-year-olds things like Call of Duty,
Right, yeah.
Battlefield, and even Grand Theft Auto. Now, like I said, okay, maybe I'm being a bit of a hypocrite here, because I did play Grand Theft Auto when I was a kid.
Right, me too.
But I didn't buy the game. It was a friend's. I went to a friend's house to play it, so it wasn't legally mine. So I think parents who are buying their kids these 18-rated games, they should be held responsible, in my personal opinion, because they're the ones that are buying the games for the kids. The kids do not have the money to go out and buy Grand Theft Auto.
Right, and even if they just explain to their kids, look, this isn't real. This is how you're supposed to live a good life. Don't copy what's on this game. It's parents that just buy stuff and sit their kid in front of it and then go off somewhere and let television or whatever bring the child up.
Exactly. They plop their kid in front of the television, and I'm talking 6, 7 years old. They're plopping them in the front of the television, giving them a controller that allows them to play as a character who smokes weed, does coke, steals cars, murders racial groups. He goes out and does this. Now, I think kids are healthier than adults allow them to be. Say they are, sorry. I'm tripping over my words here. Because, when, I never have killed anyone. Thankfully.
That we know
of. But still, I don't think kids should be playing games like that. And when a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old takes a gun to school, they shouldn't say, oh, well, look, there's a copy of Grand Theft Auto on the side. He did it because he played Grand Theft Auto. No, why that game is in the house in the first place, I don't know. Even if it's owned by the father should put it away. It should not be out available for that kid. There's a rating system in place for a reason. And that reason is to stop children playing these games. Now, I'm not saying that the games can influence the kids, but what I'm saying is that it shouldn't be automatically the game creator's fault if this kid does take a gun to school or whatever. The parents should realize that there's a massive 18 or an R rating on it or whatever, saying, look, there's stuff in this game that kids probably shouldn't be doing.
And I think if we want to talk about violence in society and condoning violence, you don't have to look much further than what our governments are doing overseas, dropping bombs out the sky on innocent people through drones, constant war all over the television. I mean, violence starts with the government if you want to talk about violence. So,
yes, it doesn't help the fact that when you turn on the 6 o'clock news, you've got Syria and the Kenya Mall incident going on. It surely doesn't help that issue either.
No. Well, if we jump to our questions now, we've got 2 questions here today. The first one is from, I'm probably going to butcher this, but Kishan Danica. And the question is, when was the moment you stopped believing in the mainstream media? Well, Well, I think most people know that I'm very skeptical of the mainstream media, and you've alluded to that yourself. But since you're not, quote, a stereotypical truther like I might be lumped in with, what's your general take on the mainstream media?
Well, I'll tell you where it all started, right? And I'm afraid this is not going to be a very spectacular story. But the reason why I stopped listening to the mainstream news was because I went to university and I didn't have a television. So I didn't really have any access to the mainstream media. So
Did you have a laptop or?
I did, but you know, when you're at university, you don't give a crap really. Let's be honest. I mean, okay, there's probably some university students out there who are listening going, I actually do, but you know, I was one of the rare few who would rather.
Yeah, and they're the ones that are trying to be politicians.
Yeah, I was one of those that would rather just, you know, on a Friday night put on their PlayStation and get a bottle of Pepsi Max. Probably shouldn't be saying brand names on here, but you know, just get and just play the PlayStation. You know, I'd use Facebook and YouTube to watch videos, and that was about it. And because I was so distant from the mainstream media, I really got my information through my Facebook feed.
Right.
Through people like, you know, yourself, Keelan, and I've got a few friends who are also like you. They're truthers as well, and they don't believe the mainstream media, and they'll put on their Facebook, "Oh, this has happened," and this is their opinion. And I'd sort of look at it, and you know, I'd Google it, and I'd see, I don't know, like the mainstream media reporting it, and I'd look through the articles, and there'd be a couple things there, and then I'd look at the ones that are sort of the alternative, and I'd look at them, and I sort of started piecing things together myself. And like you said, I introduced you to this world. In fact, you've got a lot more into it than I have. I was just very skeptical about 9/11, and always have been, and probably always will be, because there is still things that don't add up in my mind. But that's really where it all started. It was just the fact that I didn't have a television, and so I was getting news through some of my friends who were truthers. That's where it all started. So what was the original question? What was my opinion on the mainstream media? Was that it?
The question was, when was the moment? So was there a tipping point? Was there a particular story that you saw was a load of bollocks and thought, what, this can't be true? Or
No, it was just a culmination of things. It was gradual, and like I said, it only started because I didn't have a television when I was at university. I know it's the most pathetic story in the world. It's not some enlightening moment. It is just a set of circumstances that led me down that path.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different approach than what most people might be expecting from me, but I wouldn't say myself that there's a particular moment that I stopped believing in the mainstream media. In fact, I wouldn't even say I have stopped believing in the mainstream media. It's not really a matter of belief. For me, it's about facts and evidence. And to me, the mainstream media will report a lot of accurate information that you can go and verify. It's just often coated in a sort of a biased context, a political slant, presented in a corporate way that kind of downplays certain information and makes other information more important. So I don't think anybody should really believe any form of media. It's about reading between the lines and being a critical thinker and finding the truth for yourself. Now, there is a conflict in Syria. Lots of people are dying, and a chemical attack did take place. Those are all facts, and those are all things that I first heard on the mainstream media. But it's when they start bringing on politicians or trying to explain why certain things are happening, or trying to assert who did the chemical attack, for example, things like that, then I go away and make up my own mind based on the available evidence. So to Krishan, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, but to me it's not really a matter of believing what the mainstream media says. It's having your own mind and ability to either confirm or prove wrong what they say. And in the same vein, it's sad, but I've learned the hard way that the alternative media, at least the big sites like InfoWars, for example, they're no more reliable than any other big media outlet. They have their own biases, they have their own ulterior motives. I mean, if you look at their numbers and how many people watch their videos and how many people go to Infowars.com and all that, they are a mainstream media outlet. They're absolutely huge. Alex Jones has pretty much broken into the mainstream media. He's been on Piers Morgan and all this other nonsense. He is, by any definition of the word, a mainstream media talking head. So, I guess just to conclude, you can't blindly follow anyone, whether they're in the mainstream, whether they're, quote, in the alternative, whether they've created their own kind of bubble of alternative media. You have to be honest with yourself. And if you admit when you don't know something, and then go out and try and find the facts for yourself, then you're being honest. So,
and the other thing, sorry, Keelan, but the other thing that people also have to remember is that the mainstream media is also a business as well. They're not just reporting news. They do have a business agenda. They want to make money as well. So they are going to word things and pick and choose certain stories over others in what they think will make more money. For example, over here in the UK, I'm not sure about anywhere else in the world, but stories about British people will always trump any stories about any other nation. If somebody in Britain, there's a recent story actually about these two girls who I think they went to, is it Peru or something?
Oh, yeah.
And they got caught smuggling drugs. Now, if these girls were Australian or American or South African, that news would not have made it over here. But it's the fact that they're both from the UK that it's being so widely reported. So you've got to remember that the media is itself a business, and they are trying to get you to watch them, and they are going to word things and choose certain stories and phrase them in certain ways in order to spark your attention, to get your interest.
And that reminds me of a Facebook post. I think it came from the Smells Like Human Spirit podcast, which I was on quite a while ago now. But I think they posted something earlier today, and it showed you, Time magazine in America.
Mm-hmm.
It showed you all the American cover stories of Time magazine. It selected a few, and then it showed you the same month's edition of Time magazine in Europe, Asia, and whatever. And Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world would be focusing on the uprisings in Egypt or whatever, and in America it would be some boring article about depression or weddings or something.
Because that is more. Americans seem to be. They think Americans care more about that because it affects their country more.
Right, and this goes back to what you were saying. It's picking and choosing what will sell them the most copies and make them the most money.
At the end of the day, they might be reporting news, but it's sad to think they see you guys as dollar signs. They see all of us as dollar signs, and they're going to try and manipulate their news in order for you to hand over that. Now, whether it's physically or is it just through, the advertising, like whenever you go to, for example, the Sun's website over here, they've got adverts playing. They sell those advertising spaces. So they make that news look appealing to you. So you click on it, and then you've got ad banners playing all over the place. And then the Sun's getting money through that way. Most alternative news coverages, they aren't money making. They aren't in order to make a profit. They are doing it in order to try and inform the world. I don't think all alternative people are like that. I think there are some people out there who do just, disagree with everything for the sake of disagreeing with it.
There are also a lot of, I find, very spammy websites that will basically just jump on any kind of controversial topic, slap up a copy and pasted article, write some bullshit meme and stick it on Facebook that's shocking and just pull in loads of traffic.
Yeah. Or if what's happened to you before, they copy and paste your article onto their website and steal your traffic.
Right, yeah.
They've done that to you. But that's the thing. I think it's like you said, you've got to be very careful with any sort of news, whether it's from the mainstream media or from a quote unquote truther, because sometimes I've got to be honest, I find some truthers are just out there disagreeing with what's being said for the sake of disagreeing with it. And it's just, you think sometimes, hang on, you're getting things wrong here. You need to sort of stop hating on everything and really look at it with a better eye.
Get some context before coming to your conclusions and whatnot. Just going back to the second part of the question. Well, when was the moment you stopped? But well, of course, there's been certain events where I think the veil of the media has been lifted, and we can go back through the archives and look at that. Things like Iraq and WMDs, and how the mainstream media were just blindly regurgitating all the nonsense from Tony Blair and just all this bullshit that has turned out to be complete lies. And now you have to go, well, were these journalists checking their sources? Why were they giving just free rein to politicians to spout complete nonsense? Why were they greasing the wheels for war? They've done the same with Iran for years. Any kind of negative slant against Iran, they'll put it on the news. They always harp on about Iran's nuclear program, but they've never had any evidence really against them. But now that it's out there, they always have to refer to Iran's nuclear program. It's become a self-fulfilling meme that doesn't really exist. But moving on to our second and final question of today, Ollie England Beck asks, what are your thoughts on gun control? And the last time we talked about this, it wasn't on air, but you seem to be, I don't know whether you were for gun control or just kind of stricter screening for gun applicants or whatever, but has your opinion changed since we last talked about this?
No, not really, if I'm going to be honest. And I've sort of shed a bit of light on this. What it was back in January of this year, January 31st. I made a Facebook status, and it was about several people being shot in an Arizona office complex. This was only about a month after the Sandy Hook incident. And I put on Facebook, there's been another shooting in America, this time in an office complex with the suspected gunman being 70 years old. I wonder what video game they'll blame for this one. We Fit? ? And then I got a couple of comments saying from a friend of mine saying, "Oh, you got to hate Americans." And I said, "I don't hate Americans by any means. I just think that they can't come to terms with the fact that they have a serious gun control issue, and instead blame these incidences on other means. It's easier to get voters by blaming it on Grand Theft Auto, ironically, which we were speaking about earlier, than it is to say, hey, maybe our constitution is out of date when it was written, as most European countries wanted to overthrow us at the time." And then you chimed in saying it's too late for gun control. They're already there and always will be. And we had a little sort of a friendly debate over it. And my stance was that I think, and a lot of Americans are going to hate me for this. If you're listening to this, I take that as an acceptance of my opinion here. But I think that the amendment, the Second Amendment, I believe, I think it's out of date, in all honesty. I don't think that you need a gun in your house to protect yourself. Like I said, the Constitution was written at the birth of a nation. It was. We Brits consider it a civil war because America was actually owned by Britain at the time. So we consider it a civil war, but America considers it a revolutionary war. And so they should. It was the start of their nation.
I probably would have been with them if I was there at the time.
Well, I got to be honest. I don't know. I wasn't. I don't know. I was playing Assassin's Creed 3, where I was half Indian and just killing everybody. Again, a reference to Assassin's Creed there. But I think it was very different. I mean, America was a much more wilderness sort of place. It wasn't as explored. It's not like today where it is the superpower that it was. It was a very young place. It was, you know, and in the grand scheme of things, America is still a very young country. But America looked, because it was so new, it seemed a lot weaker than what it is now. So, you know, any nation could come along. And
I guess they were in a civil war. They also had a lot of infighting in the early years.
yeah, and I mean,
There was wars. You need guns in wars, I suppose.
and there's an opinion going around. Again, I wasn't around at the time, so I can't say if it's true or not. But there's an opinion saying around that, going around that the reason why America won the war was because Britain just thought it's not worth the money and resources to keep going for it.
That's going to step on a few toes.
That's going to step on a lot of Americans, and I'm sure I'm going to pay for that in the comments. But I'm just saying that is one of the historical opinions going around, that it was too much resources and just wasn't. And America as a nation just wasn't giving anything back to the empire at the time. But I'm sure many of your American listeners hate me already by now. But I don't think that it's necessary to have guns anymore. Where is a threat of a nation coming in to try and overthrow and take over America? It's not like when it was written where that could have happened. If England wanted to come back for another war, they easily could have, and they would have needed to get as much help as they possibly can. America's not like that anymore. America is the superpower of the world.
Well, I don't know. The way America acts these days, you might have China and Russia knocking on your door in a few years. But
in a few years, but at this very moment in time, that they're the top nation. And even if China or Japan did come along and become the superpower of the world, I think it's a very different world now than it was in the late 1700s. China would be more interested in developing themselves technologically, as opposed to going, oh well, look, America's got a lot of land, let's go over there and steal everything. I don't think that would be their maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll do that. Heck, maybe Kim Jong Un or Il or whatever it was his name is will do it. But
he's too busy meeting Dennis Rodman and
exactly. But I don't think it's the same world now than it was then. And by having the Second Amendment saying that everyone has the right to bear arms, I don't think works anymore, because we have seen if everyone has the rights to bear arms, it makes things a little bit more difficult. And actually, there was an episode of I don't know if you've ever heard of this show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I've heard of it, but I've not watched it.
It's a comedy, and I love it. It's controversial because they talk about a lot of they do a lot of very taboo things. But there was an episode on recently where they talk about gun control, and it's 4 main characters, and they split off. 2 of them said that they needed to get more guns on the street, and 2 of them said that they needed to get guns off the street. And the 2 that said that they needed more guns on the street went around trying to find guns to buy, and they found it a lot more difficult than they should. But
why were they doing this?
I can't remember, to be honest. It was a couple of weeks ago. But they went up to a gun convention, and the guy was willing to sell the gun without looking at any.
But you see, this is the liberals putting propaganda in the media.
No, because they did show it was difficult to get guns and things like that. But I think that there does need to be a very strict screening on who can have and sell guns. And I don't think that just because you're American automatically entitles you
to...
I
think the idea that everyone has the right to bear arms might be a little too broad. There's obviously mental people and criminals with convictions and things like that probably shouldn't be having guns, or should be at least be made harder to get guns.
I think personally that it should just stick to the police, the army. I think it should stick to that. And you actually said in the debate we had in January, you said that that we actually in Britain we have more violence than we do in America because of knife crime. And
well, we have more. I guess the term is we have more violent crime, which means more assaults, more rapes, more that kind of thing per person than in any other place in the world. Well, not any other place in the world, any more than America. I'm not sure what other statistics from other countries are, but per person we're actually more violent.
And I understand that, but my argument to that was saying that you've never had a mass killing with a knife. We've never had a story of a man walking into a school and knifing everybody that he saw.
Right. We did have a school shooting though.
We did have a school shooting,
but that ended our whole gun business. So
yeah, but I just think that it should just be to very specific people. I do not think that they should be selling guns on street corners, whether the licensed or not. I don't think they should even have ammunitions in supermarkets or whatever it is. I just think that it's saying a bad thing to the next generation by saying, oh, you need a gun. Well, they don't need a gun. Oh, well, you might get robbed. Yeah, well, you've got technology to stop that. For example, how about you get CCTV or, I don't know, ADT. Well, ADT. I have ADT for my house.
Before I go off on a big rant here, okay. I will agree with you that technologically, I think we can all agree that guns probably can be replaced. Like, you don't need a gun with a bullet that's going to kill somebody. Just have an advanced taser that can take somebody down. Yeah. If you're worried about being robbed or attacked, I'm sure that scientists can come up with some way that doesn't involve a gun with a bullet that's going to kill somebody.
But you can get rubber bullets.
Right.
Rubber bullets are non-lethal and they keep the person down.
Yeah, and other ways to incapacitate people without literally killing them. I think that's an important point to make. But before I go off on my big rant, okay. I'll start with the caveat that obviously nobody should have guns, and nobody should be considering killing each other. I'm obviously not pro-murder. I'm not pro-shooting people and so on and so forth. But I think we also have to realise that human nature isn't perfect. Some people will end up being murderers, like we talked about earlier with the video games and all that. There are just crazy people out there for whatever reason. This happens with or without guns. People will always kill each other. So just to start off with, in that respect, I think there does have to be a mechanism for protecting people and removing dangerous people from society. Now, like we just said, with technology and whatever, that doesn't have to be guns. But I think just to clear up some people's kind of fluffy idea that we're going to be able to live in a loving, caring world where nobody hurts each other, that's just stupid. But my position on gun control, and particularly obviously in America, let's focus on America. To me, we have to deal with the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is there is a heck of a lot of guns in America already. It's part of their culture. It's part of their history, you know, the founding of America, the Republic and all that. There are guns and they do exist and there's lots of them. So to me, the reality then becomes, if some people don't want there to be guns, and I'm not saying this is exactly what you want to do, but there are people out there that want to disarm the population. Well, if there's guns that already exist and many people already have guns, how do you take the guns? The only way you can safely take guns is with bigger guns and more powerful guns. So my first point is that you're never going to get rid of the guns whether anybody wants to get rid of them or not.
Well, it's the thing is what you said kind of reminds me of what was in Iron Man. I know that's a very random thing to think about, but it's like Tony Stark in Iron Man says, Robert Downey Jr. says, war is about whoever's got the bigger stick.
Right.
You know, and I can definitely see what you mean, like how in order to get the guns off them, you know, you need more guns.
I mean, there's plenty of people that would, if America said, right, we're coming for your guns, there's thousands and thousands of people that would be like, no, you're not, and they'll be, shining up their shotgun and waiting for whoever's coming to take them, and there'll be a civil war. So
Yeah.
I think that idea of doing it physically and physically removing guns is not really logical or realistic. If guns are ever going to be removed, it's going to be slowly through education and through tighter screening and just a kind of evolution of the culture. But right now, there's no way anyone's going to physically be able to just go and remove guns from people.
No,
But, yeah, and the second point I'd make is that if we accept that there's already a lot of guns that exist, and it's not really feasible to physically get rid of them, then I guess you can go to outlawing them, making them illegal, and then slowly taking them off people. And as I say, education and tighter screening. And if you pull someone over and there happens to be a gun in their trunk and they're not supposed to have it, then you take that gun off them. That's kind of how it works over here. But then really, and this was really my main point when we were on Facebook kind of debating this, you then get into a situation where the only people who would choose to own and use a gun would be criminals who don't actually care about the law because they're criminals. And obviously you also get governments and armies and whatever that will still be allowed the guns. So where does that leave the average person? They're at an unfair disadvantage to protect themselves. Their basic right to defend themselves from criminals and even trigger happy policemen, and heaven forbid even a government that suddenly turns on its own people. I mean, that's I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the American style of tyranny is more economic and psychological than it is physical. But my point is, if guns are outlawed, then normal law-abiding citizens are at an unfair disadvantage because guns still do exist. So if you're going to get robbed by somebody with a gun, how do you deal with that? You get shot.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I think I got to be honest. In my way, I'm hoping that the Americans sort of just wake up and realize. But I understand, criminals will carry guns, but it's kind of the same thing as what happens with drugs. You can ban drugs, but people find a way around it. But it's just, I just think that they need to sort of start waking up to the fact and sort of start realizing that.
I think it's more, it's more of a cultural. It has to be a cultural change rather than anything.
Yeah.
Top down from the government, like today we're going to end guns. No, it's got to be like, as a society we need to learn that this probably isn't what we should be doing.
Yeah. So we're basically what's happening is we're saying the same thing, but we're just saying it in very different ways. We're hoping that America gets a culture shock and realizes that, holy crap, we shouldn't be doing this, as opposed to having Obama saying, right, guns are outlawed, because that is when something is going to go down. And if you have one side who don't want guns and one side that do want guns, the side that does want to keep guns are going to win because they've got guns.
Right, exactly.
Mess with them. So,
and I mean, I know some people kind of joke at this logic, but when you look at things like Sandy Hook or the Batman shooting or whatever, if somebody, quite a good person within that vicinity, if they had a gun and they were trained to have a gun in emergency situations for if and when a bad person with a gun came in shooting, then that bad person could be neutralized a lot quicker than if you just run around like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Oh, and everyone's, dead on the floor. Like, I don't think you should put armed guards all over the place. I mean, that's a bit extreme. That's an oppression in itself. But I do think there is something to the debate that if there are guns and bad people have guns and are going around doing this thing, then why can't good people also have guns to protect themselves?
Yeah, we're basically saying the same things, just in a different way.
And like I said at the beginning, I'm not opposed to harsher gun restrictions and regulations and things like that. I mean, if somebody is a violent criminal or has severe mental problems that, you know, or they have anger management issues, or all these things that would kind of impede their decision making if they had a gun, then obviously they shouldn't have a gun. And I think philosophically, some people will say, well, government itself is mob rule by the barrel of a gun. Nobody wants to pay taxes, but if they don't, then, you know, they're put in jail or whatever. But the reality of the situation right now is that we do have a government, and the American people haven't voted a government out or brought in a new system of how to live their lives yet. So under the current situation, if you do want to prevent deaths, then maybe some tighter screening isn't a bad idea.
Pretty much, yeah.
We've gone over an hour, and we've got no more questions. So I think that pretty much wraps things up. To anyone that does want to leave questions for future episodes, as I say, you can tell us on Facebook, on the YouTube comments, on the website comments, you know, by carrier pigeon or whatever. Let us know, and we'll answer them at a future date. Be sure to keep it locked on wideshut.co.uk for blogs and articles and things by me, and occasionally other people like Tom Secker and so on. But yeah, that about wraps things up. Cheers, Liam, for joining me as co-host.
Thank you for having me, and I hope none of your listeners find me annoying this time.
Oh, they're going to crucify you.
If you found the preceding information valuable, please consider buying a DVD or making a small donation of your choosing. Go to wideshut.co.uk/donate. That's wideshut.co.uk/donate.